most teens really want to succeed long term. Once in a while, engage them in a vision for the future, letting them understand that all of these things you're doing help them make more decisions in their life, and then wisely back off if they need to, and so on, is ultimately helping prepare them for the success they want so badly in the future. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Not By Chance podcast. We're talking about how freedom is a fuel and talking about the science of motivation with teens. I'm excited to have Roxanne with me again today. We wanted to begin by talking about how is freedom being used in our own households. Are we using it as a reward for a job well done or them stepping up in maturity and then we give them the freedom? Or are we using it as fuel, which is a motivation? And that's the topic today, is how do we motivate teens? The question I have first is, if you are a parent that is driven by, let's say, anxiety is a big part of what's going on, you might find yourself trying to protect, trying to kind of make things safe, make things successful, kind of insert yourself pretty quickly into scenarios that you have worries about. And what I do know about teens, though, is that they are wired for autonomy. That is, all of us, as we go through the life cycle, when we get to a certain age, there's something inside us that just wants to make our own decisions. We want to be the master of our life and make those big decisions. And a lot of times, and it's, if we don't see that in a teen, we should worry, actually, because that's such an important part of them stepping up. So, Roxanne, tell me a little bit about your thoughts about freedom and motivation versus freedom as a reward.
Well, I think that it's very difficult for a parent to move from where you are instructing in every single situation in life to stepping back and allowing the teen to step forward. I was thinking about, I have a swallow's nest above my window, my office window, and I can watch these baby birds and how the parent birds, they're coming and feeding them, and it gets really noisy while they're coming to these little open mouths and feeding them. But pretty soon they're getting so big they need out of the nest or they're going to fall and hurt themselves. And so the parents allow them to start to take flights themselves, but they come back and they still need fed. I've also noticed that there are times where the birds actually crashed and they are waiting on the ground to catch their breath and get their strength back to take off again. And when I've walked outside, I've been, dozens of feet away from these baby birds, but the parents are swooping at my head, trying to protect that baby and give it the time it needs to get its strength and to try again. And so I think that there's a lot of lessons we can learn from nature, but I think that for me right now, watching myself with my teens and young adults, it's very natural for a parent to want to clamp down and say, I will give you this freedom when I can see you've earned it, instead of leading with the freedom. And it feels foreign. It feels very strange to do it that way.
Especially if you're in a pattern of kind of a descending pattern. Like it feels like the maturity is going down instead of up, but they want more freedom at the same time. Now, think about this from a family systems perspective. If the family system is set up in such a way that there is this clamping down automatic reaction when a teen stumbles, struggles, or is defiant, or whatever it might be, then the natural response for a teenager is going to be to resist that clamping down, which looks immature, by the way, really looks immature. And so you're seeing them kind of spiraling down in terms of the maturity. And the natural thing would be to see them as less mature, pull back some of the freedoms and all of that. So it's easy to get to this place where you're really at odds with one another. His biology or her biology of becoming independent, and you wanting evidence that you can let go and give more freedom.
I think it's also interesting here too, and I think most parents would agree, a lot of these problems that we're talking about, we're focused on the freedom that they want, and the issue that we're seeing instead of the whole process. And if we could learn how to adjust our process of granting freedoms and rewards and say, look, it's not about that. It's about how can we work together better? What is the flow? If we were to draw out a flow chart for how this looks, how does this flow? Because we know through science that they are wired to want freedom. And we know these old sayings that we've heard our whole lives about, you need to cut the apron strings, Mom. And moms are like, I don't want to tie them to myself. I just want to make sure that they're not going to crash and burn and I have to pick up all the pieces. And that's what many of us do. So I think if we will address this flow of what comes first and how we do it and how we help when there is a crashing and burning, then that's going to relieve a lot of stress.
It made me think about a practice we had a long time ago when we first started a previous company, where we go into the home and work with the family system, and you would see the real culture. You would see what's really going on. You could easily see, these inclinations that parents have around the hot topics in their home, and it was always kind of funny because they'd always ask, well, what if we're on our best behavior when you come to our home and you won't, we're just sort of, it's going to be worth having you come here because we're going to be performing for you, basically. And there's a limit to their ability to perform, especially in their own environment, especially when you're actually bringing up the real issues and the real topics, the real questions about freedom and all of that. And you start to see the dynamics really play out. And if we could have, like we used to do, we'd put a camera on the wall and video what's going on. It is incredibly instructive because you might be thinking you're giving choices to your teen, and it turns out that maybe the choices that you're giving aren't real choices. And that will immediately trigger in the brain this for a teenager that this is against my whole purpose right now. I need to make the choice. And so be thinking about what is it that you do, what is it that you do as co-parents even, that if you're really comfortable with kind of dictating what you want to have happen, and it's within a really confined space, you probably need to expand that and become a little uncomfortable with the freedoms and the opportunities to make choices that your teen has. If you want to strike this match of motivation, that's really what we're talking about today. Roxanne, we've been talking a lot about respect and how respect comes into play and how important that is. Talk about that, if you would, give some insight into this need that teens have to feel respected.
Well, I can start with a lesson that I just learned last night. I was helping my daughter prepare for a party that she was having at her home. And I would tell her to do something, or I'd see something, she'd do it, and then I'd come behind her and redo it. And she jokingly said, I just can't do anything right, can I? And she laughed, but I thought, really, what is the message I'm sending by redoing everything in the way I would have done it? And I think, well, I've got decades of experience to show this is the better way to set that up. But it really does undermine the fact that this is her party, her home. She should be able to do it the way she wants, and I may not know what's best.
That's a really great example of what I was talking about before, is we think we're giving choices like, it's all yours to create what you want here. But then the message is that wasn't right. And we do that. All of us probably do that in some ways. And so it's unconscious, the ways we're doing this. Sometimes we think our teens don't care about whether we respect them or not, but that's not true. They really want to be seen as competent, as capable, as someone that can achieve things in their lives. And if we're too stuck in the box of seeing them as inadequate or immature, that's absolutely going to be communicated. And we just don't know all the ways we do that. Some of it's just maybe the eye roll, or it might be just that we don't compliment them on things that they are good at. And we don't literally say, wow, that's really mature. That's really impressive that you thought of that.
I think something that has just hit me recently is sometimes we get into ruts in what we compliment our kids on, what we focus on, definitely what we are nagging them about. And I think that if we would study aptitudes a little bit and look and be those talent scouts that our kids need, we can find aptitudes in our children. I was amazed just a couple of days ago. My son called me and said, your sewing machine is not working. What do I do? I said, well, I can't do it until I get there. I can't see what's wrong. I got home and he had pulled a piece of fabric out of the trash and was making a necktie out of it because he thought that it would look cool. And I thought, when did you learn to sew besides, to roll up your jeans and cut them off or whatever? When did you learn to have the eye to see the line to copy another pattern and make that? And I thought, I need to point this out to him. You have been doing graphic design for a while, but this is translating into other areas of your life. That's just a very small example. But I think by me speaking it and labeling it, he's going to own that now.
Yeah. And this, luckily, this is one like right in our face. We couldn't miss it because he's never built a tie like that before. And it was impressive. I think I'll borrow it at some point. But the question is, could have we noticed some little hints of that earlier? And I think we did, but you kind of get what you focus on as a parent. And so at the same time, there were these inklings of talents and competency at the same time that there were deficits and lacks. And what was it that we spent our time focused on? And what message did he get from us? And I'd like to do a redo of some of the things I've done as a parent. And that's one of them. And so but it's never too late. And that's what I want to tell you right now. If you've anything we talk about in these podcasts that you say, oh, I messed that up, or I didn't do that right, don't dwell on that very long. Immediately just say, from here going forward, I can do it differently and can redefine the relationship and kind of the pattern of helping them move forward and stepping up that needs to happen. Okay, let's go back to that point you made is, what do you start with? Do you wait to see the mature behavior and then you give them the freedom? Or do you use the freedom as a motivator? And there's a couple points that occur to me. Number one, we need to pick a freedom, or better yet, let our teen pick the freedom that is motivating. That's kind of a step one. We don't see through the teen's eyes so well. So if we're the one picking what's motivating, we might miss the mark completely. Instead, we may be afraid to let the teen pick the freedom. And why would that be the case? I've got my own theories about that.
I think that they're going to go for the most they can get. And I think that if we can just talk about, let's half that, or let's start out with a quarter of what you're asking for, and then move up like that. I think that still creates hope in them rather than just shutting it down.
Well, your point is it's going to resonate with a lot of parents out there that the reason we don't do that is we're afraid they're going to go for, the top thing. I want a new car, or I want to go to Cancun with my best friend, or, whatever those freedoms are that we're afraid of. Because if you think about it, if there's this power struggle going on between you and your teen and they're wanting more, and we're just like, that's just unreasonable, of course we're going to think that they're going to do that again. Why would we want to get into an argument over something? And so we don't necessarily invite them to come to us with a freedom. We think they're going to do that on their own. And what would change if you switched that around, where you basically said, I'd like you to come up with something that's motivating to you, but use your wisdom, think through the obstacles to getting the freedom that you want, and then come to me with that. Because what I really want is I want you to have the freedoms that you want, that are legal, ethical, within our value system, appropriate for your age, a few of those things. And if you don't engage with them around discussions of the kind of freedoms they bring to you, if we're afraid to engage in that conversation because of the conflict potential of it, then we're going to miss the opportunity to help them think more wisely. We should welcome all those conversations, set the stage so that those conversations are productive by saying, hey, I really want to listen to you and I want it to go back and forth between us. And we'll be covering what you want and we'll be talking about what the obstacles are to getting what you want. And we might decide that you're ready. We might decide that you're not, but let's do this together. And they will start to think about, okay, instead of these pie in the sky wish list items that they have, they'll start to self-evaluate some of this, because the next point to this is that you start to connect trust and responsibility to the freedoms they want. They start to see that it's not just this freedom that comes magically out of thin air that I get because I asked for it, but that there are conditions that come with the freedoms. Now, all of a sudden, they're connecting the dots and they can see that, all right, I want that because I came up with the idea. And number two, now I've had a mature, open conversation where I've been able to listen to my parent about that, and they've been able to listen to me, and they heard me, and they weren't just saying no, but they were helping me understand what it's going to take. And so now I know if I get that freedom, it really is going to require the stepping up. Now, in some cases, it might be a small enough step where you as a parent, you say, you know what? I'm a little uncomfortable with that because of some things in the past, choices and things like that, but I'm going to say yes to that. And if you handle it well, and what do you think that looks like if you handle it well? Let them describe it. Let them to define, what does it look like to be mature enough to have that and to keep that freedom? And then you could ask the question, if you're a slip up, what should we do? I've given you the kind of a chance here, and if you slip up, what do you think should happen? What you'll notice is that your teen will say, well, I probably better take a step back, or I need to repair it in some way and then move forward again. And so the conversation around these topics can be incredibly fruitful for their maturity and their growth and understanding, but also for your relationship.
I have to just stop you right here, Tim, and just even listening as a parent myself to the way you were role-playing this, just even the one-sided role play you were doing, it felt so hopeful. I felt respected. I felt honored that you would come to me like this, because I guarantee this is unnatural for you as a parent, because most parents are very busy, very distracted, and kids come with their pie-in-the-sky plans, and parents are like, I can't do that right now, or I can't even think about that, or that's nuts. Why are you even bringing me that? So to have something this calm and to have a parent come to me as a teen and say, I'd like to help you get that, oh my gosh, I will step up for that. It's a compliment to my mental ability, my physical ability, my maturity as a teen. Yeah, let me clarify. I'm pretending I'm a teen listening to this. I just feel empowered. A very overused word, but there is no better word for it.
So you felt motivation.
Yeah.
Which is the goal, right?
Yeah, because all of a sudden there was not this adversarial tone in what you were saying. All of a sudden it was collaborative and appreciative of me.
Yeah, I just had this picture of this teen coming at me, kind of with some aggression. And what happens if we just sort of step to the side, put our arm around them as they're kind of moving their direction, say, let's go your direction for a minute, and let's talk about it. And let me just kind of guide you around here to help you see that there are some other things that come along with it. And they might decide that that's a 6-month goal instead of a 7-day goal. And that's what we want, right? That's mature thinking. Yeah, I came to you with this big request, and at the end of the conversation, I can see that's going to take me 6 months to get to. And then we could redirect that and say, but what's a quick win, so that we can begin to see this change in dynamic in the way that our teen goes about getting what they want. If you think about it, if we don't have this kind of dynamic, the teen, biologically wired, they literally have to get the freedom somehow. They have to get the freedom. And if it's not the right way, which we're talking about here, it's going to be through a secretive way. It's going to be through a manipulative way, through negotiation, badgering, kind of getting you to a point where you just are exhausted and you give up and you say whatever, right? And now what have they learned? That that's how you get the freedom. And we haven't helped their maturity at all in that case. If you're tired of having power struggles with your teen over freedoms and privileges, put the ball in their court and have them create a plan for how they're going to earn back that freedom. We've got a tool for you. It's free. You can find it at trustandfreedom.trustyy.com. You can find that in the description below. In coaching parents around this in the past, I wish I had a visual, but there was a inverted pyramid. We called it the trust and freedom pyramid. It was upside down. And as the teen shows more and more maturity, it kind of goes up this way. Obviously, the freedom starts to widen out and they get a lot more freedom along the way. And I think one of the things we've done right all of these years in coaching parents is we would say, if you think the maturity is right here and the freedoms that come along with that maturity, is everything below that, step up just a little bit and give them freedoms at that level.
A little bit higher than their level.
Yeah, not clear up here, but just a little bit higher. And that should always be kind of the principle. We're wanting them to test out, are they mature enough? And we can even set it up that way to say, yeah, I'm just a little bit uncomfortable with this, but that's okay. I think you can do it, and I want you to have it. So go ahead and let's test it out. And then again, you could go back to that conversation we had before. And if that doesn't work out, what would that look like? And what should be the slip-up plan if that should happen?
Can you just say a little bit more about the slip-up plan? Because parents might be wondering, so does that mean I wait 6 months before they try again, or what does that look like?
I love the wording of that, by the way, kind of the slip-up plan, because all of us are going to make mistakes, and we can all relate, even as adults, that we need a plan to kind of get back on track when we've slipped up in something. And a slip-up feels a little less extreme, like not a huge mistake that's got huge consequences to it. And so it's the beginning of maybe a small mistake. And so I'd say, I guess if it's not a small thing or a medium-sized thing, you might label it something different. There might be a full-on relapse, and we have to kind of reset and go back to previous levels of freedoms that were limited, and maybe it's a loss of gaming privileges to use something concrete. But if it's a slip-up, and let's take that example of the Xbox. It's such a prevalent, anything with technology these days. There's a lot of desire for our teens to have access to those things. And let's say that there was some limits to the amount of time being played. And as part of that plan, it's like, okay, we'll give you a little extra time, but that means when the time's up, and by the way, this can all be drawn out of them because they know what's gone wrong in the past. So you can say, what's been the problem in the past that we've had with this? Believe me, all the parents have told their teens what the problems were. And the teen can say, well, because I won't stop playing when I'm supposed to, and we get into an argument and, all of that. And so a slip-up would be going past that point, past the timeline, and being angry and maybe conflict and arguments and all of that, because it can get really ugly around that. To me, that would be a slip-up. So what if you had them create the plan beforehand? Identify what a slip-up would be and ask them, how do you recover from that? And what if your teen came to you and said, well, I should apologize to you if that happens, and maybe I should lose Xbox, for the next day, and then we could start fresh again. I like that idea because they took responsibility. They've kind of given themselves their own consequence in the process. And they're just kind of getting back on the track and moving forward again. So they get to try it the day after again to see if they will stop when they're supposed to.
One of the things I like about that is that it's not something that's so far in the future that it's impossible for us to maintain the grounding or whatever we're going to call it. That it's something that, yes, you can quickly recover from it, but it's going to hurt for that full day, and you're going to be full well aware who made the choice to break that commitment.
Yeah, so if you set this up so that they're really driving this in the first place, and they're coming up with the reward of the freedom, they're coming up with what's the plan if I don't follow through, they're coming up with kind of a getting back on track plan, and you maintain that open communication so that the slip up happens, you follow through with the plan, which they created, and then you get back on track. And let's say they slip up again and again. At some point, you might say, okay, this has happened like every other day. So every time you get this freedom, there's a step back. What should we do? Because we don't want to keep doing this. They might come up with a little more severe scenario, like, I guess I'm not ready to have it like I thought I was, and so I'm willing to not have it for a week and then try again. So this is a work in progress. Remember, these are teens wired for more freedom, more risk-taking, which is all part of the plan, and at the same time, they do need your guardrails. They need you to be there to help them have mature thinking around this, learn how to start to manage themselves and so on. But the key is let them lead as much as they can.
I think that's a really important point for us as parents to think about, is that we are trying to build guardrails, not walls, not to keep them out of the thing they desire most, but build guardrails. Gaming has been built to be addictive. So it is very hard to let kids just sample it or try. I mean, it's a practice for them to learn how much is enough and not too much, and to learn how to bring that back. So it might be interesting for you to ask in those terms, what would be some guardrails that can help you keep this privilege and this freedom without creating a wall where you are not allowed to have it?
You're making me think of the importance we have as parents to help them also think about them in the future as a successful young adult doing well in life. So you kind of get past those immediate wants and desires to this future state and have that conversation so you can kind of go back to that. So they've got that in their mind and they can say, okay, my use of the Xbox or whatever, is it helping me get closer to or farther away from this personal vision that I have of myself, that I can see myself? Because, by the way, I don't know any teen that wants to, there's very few in their life. They have to be in a very dark, low place to get to the point where they want to sabotage their own life. Most teens really want to succeed long term. And so once in a while, to engage them in a vision for the future, and knowing what that is and what they want and expressing your confidence they can get there, and letting them understand that all of these things you're doing to help them make more decisions in their life and then wisely back off if they need to and so on, is ultimately helping prepare them for the success that they want so badly in the future. Okay, so we're near the end of the podcast, and we wanted to bring out these parenting types and scenarios to see where you fit. And if you recognize yourself in any of these patterns, then we want to give you some tools and ways to think about it. And the first pattern is we've talked about it a little bit, but the overindulgent parent. If you're already in the category of an overindulgent parent, that means that freedoms are not motivators anymore because they get them without doing anything different. And there's really no requirements in their behalf. They don't have to think about how do I get that the right way. They're already getting it in some way. So you're going to have to change it a little bit. And that's the great thing about this whole philosophy too, is to have them you pick something that you're willing to let them pick a freedom that maybe they don't have right now, or you might have to restrict a freedom that they have right now and say, I'd really like to have you get that back, but I need you to get it back in the right way. So be thinking about a plan that would show that you're ready for that freedom. And I'm going to ask you to create a plan to get it back because, as soon as you're ready, I'm ready to give it to you. So you have to kind of readjust the rules of the freedoms that they already have.
I just have a suggestion. I just thought of this. It would be so helpful if you knew what you wanted, what the big motivator was for your teen, and you started this podcast episode over and put it back on like 2 times speed so you can listen to it again. But now with this in mind, and you'll have a very different experience listening to this episode if you're thinking this way about that issue.
Yeah, this is about helping them value the freedom, not expect it.
Mm-hmm.
Bottom line, that's, they may already be in the boat of expecting it. We have to kind of reel it back and say there needs to be a valuing of this freedom. Another scenario that's very common is the mismatch in parents, because there might be a parent out there saying, yes, I want this because my husband is he's so rigid and strict. He won't give freedoms that my kids want. And the father, in this case, would be really afraid of this because he might be thinking his co-parent is already way too far the other way, giving these freedoms away. So let's say you got the overindulgent one in his eyes, the father's eyes, and that advice I just gave about the overindulgent parent would apply. Why, like that parent needs to step back and say, how do we help them value this freedom, not just expect it? And that's going to feel really good, by the way, to that co-parent on the other side. But then the other side, this creates the balance because now use the so-called overindulgent parent are now seeing your co-parent step in the other way and say, okay, I will put that freedom on the table if they can come up with a good plan to get it. So now, literally, the process has brought the two more to the center and created balance. And by the way, this is the most common interpersonal parenting dynamic that I've seen that's really hurting kids' growth and development and, honestly, the relationship of the teens with both parents. You might think, oh, the overindulgent parent is getting all the benefits here of that relationship. But in reality, their teen, who they really care about, is not growing in the process the way they should. And so that hurts. That doesn't feel good. And so really, in this scenario too, the bad cop or let's say the strict parent, what a benefit to that person because they're brought into the family system in a way that they feel like now I can be included. I'm not just the bad cop or the one saying no. So it's a fantastic way to kind of mend the divide between two parents who are on opposite ends of the continuum here. All right, let's talk about the fear-based parenting, the overly anxious parent. We restrict and contract the freedoms because of the fear and the anxiety. But again, if we look long-term about what we're creating, there's a lot more confidence long-term in the teen if we're having them actually take on challenges along the way and letting them have more freedom than we're comfortable with. Because in the process, they're learning. They'll probably make mistakes, but those mistakes are learning opportunities as well. And, I think about a family. This is a very unique story. I'll make it really quick. But a family who had a teen who was very anxious, depressed, coming out of treatment, and it's a unique situation. But this young man ended up coming out of treatment and going to live with my parents. And my parents and my dad especially would live they live out in the country, and my dad, the way he raised me was like I could go anywhere I wanted to go, out there on the land and explore and be a part of nature and things like that. And he just kind of thought the same thing, even though I told him, you kind of need to have some boundaries here. But he had the four-wheeler out there, and he just basically said, yeah, he taught him how to ride it, and he told him he could ride it around the place, and he had access to really hundreds and hundreds of acres he could ride this four-wheeler on. And I was keeping his parents abreast of what was going on, and they were really anxious, especially when he sent a picture of this scrape he got on the back of on his back to his parents, that he had had a little accident while riding the four-wheeler. But they acknowledged they'd never seen him happier. They'd never seen him do such hard things. And it took being under a different roof, in this case, to kind of let those freedoms happen so that he could grow and progress during that time. Now let's talk about the transactional rule enforcer parent. This may be very uncomfortable to you because it's been this transaction, you do this and you get this freedom. It's black and white. If you don't do it, you don't get it. As soon as you mess up, you lose it. It's really, really clear like that. So it might be very, very scary to you to say, I'm going to do this very differently than that. But I can tell you that if you want to really increase motivation, you might have compliance. But that will run its course, and there will be a point in time where they will not comply because, again, they are wired for autonomy. And if you don't change your approach to this, the motivation will go away, and you might get compliance in front of you, but you really won't get real maturity and growth. So I invite you to really change the approach and the standard that you have and start to see them. And this is hard, believe me. I've kind of been in this category myself, to let them lead and let them ask and request some things and give them a space to potentially succeed, hopefully. And if not, fail, but learn. And the sooner we can all do that, the better. So I wish you really good luck in making that shift because, again, you're going to have anxiety if you're not controlling all the variables. But just remember, the motivation will run out. Okay, so you can tell we've delved deeply into this idea of helping a teen kind of lead the way, helping them kind of break the old cycles between them and their parents and the power struggles that ensue as they're trying to get freedoms and parents are trying to give it to them the right way. And as a result to that, we've created a whole system through AI to enable a teen to have a conversation with the Trustyy guide, we call it, to create, to identify a freedom they want, create a mature plan for being able to get there, and we invite them to think about a 7-day plan. What do you realistically think you could earn in a 7-day period? And then at the end, they create, the teen creates, with the help of the AI, a plan that they present to the parent. And parents are blown away by this because this is them operating on their own autonomously with an AI coach that understands age appropriateness, understands what's legal, what's not, understands that there might be big requests that can't be given at that point in time, but helps them think through a real plan to essentially qualify for the freedom they want. And you haven't even been in the middle of that. So how would you like to get this letter, this plan back from your teen that is wise beyond what they've done before? Because remember, you see them through a certain lens. They're reacting to you. And so what you've seen so far has been with the two of you in the mix doing what you do. And you take you out of it for a minute, let them explore this on their own, and then come to you with a proposal. Now, you might need to adjust the proposal, but you'll actually be able to approve it as is, or you'll be able to say that needs to be edited a little bit, but yes, you're going the right direction. And then ultimately, you'll end up in a free part of the Trustyy app where you're able to, for a solid week, track the progress, this time with not you being the one hounding your teen, making sure they follow through, because it doesn't matter to you whether they follow through. It's their plan. And since it's their plan, they're going to be motivated to follow through. And they'll have the notifications to help them follow through. They'll have the Trustyy guide right there in the app to say, okay, this is what the plan was. What do you want to do with that?
They'll have the chat where you can chat on the topic in the app.
Yep. Anyway, we're really excited about this. We think it's going to really change the whole dynamic between parents and teens around the idea of getting independence.
We'll put the link in the show notes, so make sure you go look for it there.
Yes. And the last thing I want to share with you, if you're a treatment professional and you want more kind of these practical ways to help teens who are struggling, I've been invited to speak at a conference called TIC, T-I-C, Talk. And
T-A-L-K.
T-A-L-K. And it's a therapeutic intervention conference. That's the TIC. And Emil Harker is the one that's putting this together. Really excited about that. It's going to be in October the 10th, I believe. We'll put that in the show notes as well, so you can click on that, go to there, and you'll get a whole lot more of these very practical things that will help you help the teens who are struggling, but also their parents. So if this has been helpful to you today, we'd just ask if you'd please like, subscribe to this, and please share. You don't know how helpful that would be to us to get this message out. So thank you for being with us.
See ya.